There are loads of features hidden throughout Bambu Studio that you may not have known even existed, or you might have found them but don't know what they do. Well, in this video we're going to be looking at all of the features that you can access by right-clicking either on an object or on the build plate itself. So let's have a look. So in Bambu Studio, if we get a model imported, let's go with just a Kali dragon for now. Once you've got something on the print bed, if you right click it with the mouse, it's going to give you a list of options. Let's start with the first one, which is fill bed with copies. If you select this, it'll add the maximum number of the items you have selected to the print bed while still keeping them safely spaced apart. This is really useful for if you need to print a huge number of an item at the same time and you want to get the maximum out as you can per print. However, let's go back to one. What if you just wanted a few of this one item you had on the print bed? Well, the next option is clone. But cloning does more than just make more copies of that model. Let's say we open the paint tool and we color in some black eyes for the Kali dragon. Now if we import another Kali dragon, now for the sake of the example, I'll import another Kali dragon and get it spaced out on the bed. Now, if I clone this one and select I want 3 clones, you'll see that it is also cloning any adjustments we've made to that model. It's not just making a clone of the model, it's making a clone of everything we've done to it. Let's get this all cleaned up again. The next option is fix model. Now, even though your design might look fine on the print bed, sometimes there are issues hidden in the background which can affect the way that the slicer interprets that model when slicing it. If you click Fix Model, it's going to try and repair any of those potential hidden issues. Usually the slicer will let you know if it thinks that you need to do this, and if not, then you're probably fine. Now, as you may know, the STL that you've imported is entirely made up out of flat-sided triangles. The more triangles that this model has, the more detail the model has, but also the more processing power your computer is going to need to be able to view, edit, and slice that model. Using Simplify Model allows you to reduce the amount of triangles whilst keeping the core shape. You're able to adjust this either by sliding the detail level or by sliding through the decimate ratio. With either of these, it's going to tell you how many triangles will result using the setting that you're applying. And then you can also choose to show wireframe, which then basically puts a line along the edge of all the triangles, allowing you to more easily see the shape that it's creating. If we click Apply, that's then going to modify the shape on our print bed to that new simplified design. Let's Ctrl Z for now, and we'll come out of that. Simplify model can be useful if either you want the aesthetic look of a simplified model, or if your computer is struggling with the high level of detail of a model. If the model is really highly detailed, it might have a lot of features which are just too small for your printer to be able to actually print. So simplifying it will allow you to run faster on your computer without having any impact on the final printing quality. The next option in the right-click menu is Mesh Boolean, which is the same as Mesh Boolean in the toolbar at the top. I've recently covered this in a feature-specific video, so I won't be doing a deep dive into it now. But effectively what this allows you to do is add models together so they print as one, subtract them from each other, or manipulate them with the shape of other models. The next option in the right-click menu is Center. If I put this over on the edge and right-click and click Center, it will move it right to the center of the bed. If I had several models all spread out across the bed, and then I use the Auto Layout button, it's going to move them all as close to the center as possible. If, however, I was to space them all out on the bed, select All using Control or Command A, right-click and then click Center, it will keep the same relative spacing between all of them, and center that spacing on the center of the bed. And then just right-clicking one of these and centering, it will move that one directly into the center. Okay, let's get rid of these other 3 and continue. Now for the next setting, I'm going to make a copy of this, so we'll have 2 of them, and I'm going to position it so they are slightly overlapping on the print bed. And with them both selected, I'm going to right-click and click Assemble. My video I mentioned earlier, which covers the Mesh Boolean tool, also looks deeper into the assembly function, so make sure you check that out if you'd like to learn more. With these objects added as an assembly, I can now click and move them around together as one. They're nested under an assembly in the object list. If I now right-click them, I can go to Split and then select Split to Objects. This is the same as going up and selecting Split to Object up in the toolbar. Okay, so let's get rid of one of these Kali dragons for now, and we'll recenter the remaining one. The next option is the ability to mirror an object. So you can mirror it along the x-axis, which is the left to right of the print bed. You can mirror it along the y-axis, which is the front to back of the print bed. And you can also mirror it along the z-axis, which is from the bottom to the top of the print area. So let's mirror this along the x-axis, and you can see that it is flipped. It is mirrored along that line. Note that mirroring is different to rotation, so if you were to mirror something with text on it, the text would then be back to front. It wouldn't just be rotating the other direction. And the next option in the right-click menu is delete, which is no different to just hitting the delete key on your keyboard when you've got an object selected. Let's undo that with Command or Control Z. The next option we have is add part, and this is specific to when you are right-clicking directly on an object. This is different to the Add Primitive option, which is available when you right-click on the print plate, which we'll be looking at in a minute. Under Add Part, there is a list of further options. The first is Load. This allows you to select an external model and import that. Beneath this, there is also a list of simple shapes, such as a cube, a sphere, and a cylinder. Once you've added a part, it gets placed on the build plate, and then you get a reminder that you need to switch to the Objects mode in Process Settings if you wanted to change the settings specific to that model. In the Objects section, you'll then notice that that object has been nested inside the object which you right-clicked on originally before adding the part. This means that any settings you change specific to the original model will also be applied to the new part which you have added. If you then had the new part overlapping with the original part and you sliced it, if you look down through the layers, you'll see that they have now been merged into a single object, so they would be printed together without causing any sort of toolhead collisions. As I mentioned before, in addition to the list of simple objects that you have under the Add Part section, there is also Load, which allows you to select an external model and import that as a part of the model that you've got selected. So here I've imported a Benchy, and because this is a part of an existing model which is sat on the print bed, this then allows me to place this wherever I want. So unlike a raw independent model which needs to be sitting on the print bed, you could technically place this so it's hovering in mid-air if you really needed that. You can see here I've sliced this here with the Benchy sitting in the middle of the air. It's giving me a warning that there is a floating region and I should add support material, but it's not stopping me from being able to place this above the print bed. I can then select individual parts of that object again in the object list on the left. The next option in the right-click menu is Add Negative Part, and this is the same as Add Part, but the difference is the part that you add will then be deleted from the overlapping area of the part that you added it to. So you can see here I've placed the cube and it has then deleted that area of the dragon when it was sliced. You can still use the Load function in the Add Negative Part, so I could then import, let's say, a Benchy, and then I would be able to delete an area of the Kali dragon in the shape of the part of the Benchy which is overlapping with it. The next option in the right-click menu has a similar mechanic with the ability to add simple shapes or load a custom shape, but the difference here is it's not being added or deducted from the model. It allows you to apply specific settings to a specific area. So you can see here I've sliced it with a cube over the Kali dragon and it has not affected it at all. But if I was to then right-click it on the object menu on the left, I can then apply specific settings to the area of that cube. So let's say I go and select under Others, I'll add a fuzzy skin and set that to Contour. This means that the fuzzy skin setting that I've added to that cube will be applied to any area that that cube is overlapping with the Kali dragon. You can see here the fuzzy skin has then been added specifically to that area and not any other part of the model. This can be useful if you want to effectively paint on something like fuzzy skin, but can be used to apply pretty much any setting to a specific area of that model, with the exception of some things like layer height which can't vary inside the model itself. The next option is Add Support Blocker. This gives you the same list of options for loading a simple shape or loading an external model. The difference is this is very similar to the right click of the Support Paint tool. If you have Auto Support Material turned on, then support material will not be generated for any areas of your model which overlap with this add blocking cube. So you can see here that it has been generated, but not in the areas where the cube was interacting with the Kali dragon. If I was to get rid of the cube and reslice, you'll see that there would normally be support material in those areas. The next option is Add Support Enforcer, and this is very similar. The difference being this is like the left click in the support paint tool. So if you have a manual type of support material enabled, then support material will only be generated in areas where this object is interacting with the item, unless of course you have used the paint tool and you've added other areas as well. So if I was to slice this now, you can see only support material is being generated in areas the cube was interacting with the Kali Dragon. Next up is height range modifier. This allows you to select a height range of the item you've selected and then apply specific settings just to that height range of that model. Once you've added a height range, you'll see that it has been added to the object list on the left, and then you can select the actual range based on the height in millimeters. So by default, this is going to be from 0 to 2 millimeters, but you can adjust this whatever you want. Let's set from 10 millimeters height to, let's say, 15 millimeters. Once I set that, you'll see that the name has changed to reflect the actual height in the object listing. We can now go through and change any of the settings that are available here, and it will only affect this model in this height range. So to easily see it, let's select fuzzy skin again, and then you can see that fuzzy skin has been applied to this Kali Dragon specifically from 10mm height to 15mm height. As with all of these modifiers and shapes that we've added, you can just go into the objects list on the left and then click delete. To show the next option, I'll import another model, so let's just go and bring in a benchy and we'll pop this on the print bed and get them auto arranged. So if I was to slice this now, you'll see that we have two objects on the print bed. If however I was to go back to the prepare tab, right click on, let's say, the Kali Dragon and then untick printable, you'll see it's become a shadow. You can still select it and move it around. However, when you then slice the build plate with an object set like this, you'll see that that object doesn't exist. This basically prevents that object from being seen when it's being sliced. This is quite useful if you've got a build plate that you spent time putting together and laying out and you needed to print it again but avoid one item. You didn't want to delete the item because you want to use it later, but this is how you can quickly avoid printing specific items on the plate without having to delete them. So if I put the process settings back into global mode now, the next option on the right click menu when right clicking on an object is edit process settings. This is simply a shortcut to switch back to the object mode in process settings with that item selected, ready to apply settings specifically to that model. The next option in the list when you've right-clicked on an object on your print bed is Edit in Parameter Table, and this is a convenient way of quickly comparing what the settings you have applied to different objects. As you work through this, you'll see the object settings appear on the right-hand side, and you can see quickly which ones are applied to which models. In addition to the print settings, you can also set the filament that has been applied to that model, and you can also set it as printable or not printable, as we just saw as one of the right-click options. To show you the next setting, I'm going to delete these items and import another model which I quickly threw together for the purpose of showing you this setting. This is just a simple test cube with a recess on each side and then a cylinder poking out the top. If I then switch back into Fusion 360, which I designed it in, and then let's extrude one of these areas out, and then I'm going to save this over the original file, so it's got the same name, and it'll be in the same location. If I then switch back to Bambu Studio, right-click, and then go Reload from Disk, this will look at the location where this file was originally imported from, and import whatever file is in that location with the same name. So if any changes have been made, or if it's been replaced with a completely different file but with the same name in the same location, those changes will be reflected within Bambu Studio. After updating the file, the newly imported version will reflect any of the position, scaling, and settings that you had applied to it, but anything that you had painted onto it, such as the actual paint tool, or the support tool, or the seams tool, that will be reset, and you are going to need to apply those again on the newly imported model. By the same token, if you were to right-click on a model on your print bed and select the next option, Replace with STL, and select another model, it will then replace that item on the print bed, but retain any of the location, orientation, and settings data you had applied to the model that's been replaced. Now, to show you the next feature, I'm going to use the Mesh Boolean tool, which I've recently done a tutorial specifically looking at, so make sure you check that out. I'll leave a link in the description below. I'm going to use this tool to delete an area of this model which we've imported, which is the Kali Dragon. You can see I've updated it here and it looks very different. I can now right-click this and go to Export as one STL and save this under a new name. I'll call it Cut Dragon. I'll click Save. I'll then delete this from the print bed, and then if I was to go and import a new model, you can see that the modified version of the Kali Dragon is now available as its own STL. This could then be shared or saved for later use. Let's delete this and bring in the full Kali Dragon. Now, the next option when right-clicking on it is Convert from Inch. So this is if the model has been designed with inches as the base unit. There is also the ability to convert from meter if meters was the base unit rather than millimeters, which is the standard in 3D printing. Choosing either of these options will simply scale the model relative to the difference in the selected units. And the very final setting that is available when right-clicking on an object on the print bed is the ability to change the filament that is assigned to that model. This is the base filament. If you're painting it, then it will obviously allow you to use multiple filaments, but this is the default filament for that model. You'll be able to select from any of the filaments that are currently available in the filament settings section in the top left of the screen. So whilst that's all the settings available when you right-click on a model, there is also options available when you right-click on the print plate itself. So let's import a few models just to show an example of what these can do. So when right-clicking on the print bed, there is the option to select all, which will select everything on this build plate. If you have multiple build plates, it will ignore anything else and only select what is on this plate. Command A or Control A on your keyboard will select everything regardless of what the plate they're on. The next option is Delete All, which will delete everything on this plate, again not affecting any other plates in the project if you have multiple plates. Let's Control Z or Command Z and bring those back, and the next option is Arrange. If we space these out, selecting Arrange from the right-click menu is the same as selecting the Arrange button on the side of the print bed. It will just rearrange everything on this bed to the closest to the center it can while still being evenly spaced. The next option, if I put these on their side slightly, is the same as Auto Orientation or Auto Rotation for this print plate. Unlike this one at the top, it's only going to affect this build plate and not everything in the project if you have multiple plates. The next option is currently grayed out because I only have one build plate, but if you had more than one, this would allow you to delete the build plate that you have currently got selected. This would be the same as pressing the cross in the menu at the top right of the build plate. The next option, Add Primitive, has a list of simple objects such as a cube, sphere, and torus. This allows you to bring them in and place them on the build plate, scaling them and repositioning them as you like, and using these however you want. In addition to the simple shapes, there is also 4 test or benchmark designs that you can put straight in there. This includes a couple of test cubes by Bambu Labs, the OG Benchy, and an all-singing, all-dancing tester that tries to test the limitations of your printer in a variety of ways, including overhangs, bridging, small extrusions, and dimensional accuracy. You then have the ability to lock your plate, which is the same as hitting the padlock button on the side of the build plate itself, and then finally edit plate name, which is just the same as hitting the pen button on the top left of the build plate. Well, I really hope you found this video useful and maybe even found out about some features that you weren't aware of before. If you did find it useful, please make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons. It makes a massive difference to me. Thanks very much, guys, and until next time, happy printing. Thanks very much for sticking around, guys. While you're here, why not check out my video on the Mesh Boolean tool in Bambu Studio, or how to request filament changes at specific layer heights. Again, thanks very much, and happy printing.